think I relate to any of my characters. I've played a crack addict from Boston. I've played an Upper East Side princess.
In recent developments surrounding Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, there is a noticeable shift in their legal strategy. What appears to be happening is a continual pivot from one justification to another, rather than directly taking accountability for their actions. This pivot was further highlighted in an oppositional filing to Perez Hilton's motion for a protective order. Perez Hilton, a known media personality, sought judicial intervention by asking the court to issue a protective order against Lively. His argument was based on Lively's extensive use of subpoenas, which he claimed were overly broad, harassing, and intended for intimidation. Interestingly, unlike similar motions filed by others, this one was admitted into the docket, and Lively was given a deadline to respond. In her response, Lively's legal team attempted to discredit Perez by claiming he acts as a paid operative for Wayfair, alleging he disseminates defamatory content about her as part of a coordinated effort. They even asserted there is a contractual agreement, either direct or indirect, between Perez and Wayfair. Perez has denied all such accusations. While Lively's team tries to paint Perez as someone engaged in a smear campaign, it's essential to understand Perez's long-standing style of journalism, which includes the use of nicknames, catchy titles, and opinionated commentary. He has always maintained a balance between reporting facts and providing entertaining content. Lively's new legal maneuver isn't to argue that there was never a smear campaign, but to claim that she is being deprived of discovery evidence due to others asserting privilege or having deleted or misplaced information. Rather than accept that evidence may not exist, she argued Lively's new legal maneuver isn't to argue that there was never a smear campaign, but to claim that she is being deprived of discovery evidence due to others asserting privilege or having deleted or misplaced information. Rather than accept that evidence may not exist, she argues it's being withheld from her. To illustrate her persistence, she identified a participant from a privileged email thread and is now seeking documents from them, arguing that this particular individual is not covered by attorney-client privilege. This shows Lively's ongoing attempts to bypass legal protections and gain access to restricted documents. Specifically regarding Perez Hilton's subpoena, he filed a motion to quash it in Nevada. Yet Lively circumvented this by filing a cross-motion to compel in New York. This raises questions about jurisdictional overreach and whether her actions were legally sound. Notably, she failed to address the core of Perez's protective order motion, and instead focused primarily on compelling discovery. A point of contention was a screenshot from a social media post, where someone else claimed they had incurred over $5,000 in legal fees due to Lively's subpoenas. Lively's legal team dismissed this as unverified and irrelevant. However, the person who made that post later confirmed they had indeed received a bill totaling $5,580 strictly related to the Blake Lively subpoena. They also had another legal bill amounting to $3,300, bringing their total to nearly $10,000 in legal expenses. This raises legitimate concerns about Lively's use of legal tools to pressure or intimidate independent creators. Moreover, Lively's legal filings included a number of personal attacks on Perez Hilton. She claimed he used disparaging and defamatory nicknames such as Blackface Blake and Lying Lively, and she cited video titles like Blake Lively's non-existent smear campaign falls apart and Blake Lively the bully. Perez's supporters argue these titles reflect summaries of court documents and public record, rather than baseless slander. In a notable twist, Lively argued that Perez Hilton is not a legitimate journalist but rather an influencer. She made this claim by referencing a third-party list that identified him as such and insisted that he does not follow journalistic standards, specifically citing his failure to seek comment from her side. However, legal and ethical standards in journalism do not require reporters to seek comment when reporting on public court documents. In fact, much of independent journalism today is based on reviewing public records, court dockets, and summarizing findings for the public. Journalists and content creators have no legal obligation to consult either party in a legal case, especially if the information is derived from a public court record. This is especially true for cases involving public figures. Journalists are allowed to report on public court proceedings without prior approval or input from the people involved. The same rules apply to major news outlets as well as independent creators. As long as the information is public and not sealed, it is legally permissible to report on it. Furthermore, the claim that Perez Hilton is part of a conspiracy to seed content on behalf of Wayfair is speculative and lacks evidence. Such accusations can have a chilling effect on independent journalism, especially when public figures use their influence to pursue legal actions against smaller creators. That what's equally troubling is that Lively's legal filings suggest a pattern of attempting to work around legal privileges. For example, she previously claimed that attorney Brian Friedman was acting in a PR capacity to sidestep attorney-client privilege. Now she's trying to argue Perez is not a journalist to discredit his protections under journalistic law. In conclusion, this ongoing case demonstrates a disturbing trend where public figures use their legal resources not necessarily to seek justice, but to intimidate and suppress dissenting voices. The evidence thus far suggests that rather than substantiate claims with factual evidence, the legal strategy is increasingly focused on targeting individuals who challenge the narrative. This pivot, blaming others, filing extensive subpoenas, and attempting to circumvent legal safeguards, highlights a broader issue about power, privilege, and the role of independent media in holding those in power accountable. This case is far from over, and it continues to raise important questions about journalistic freedom, the abuse of legal tools, and the responsibilities of public figures in navigating public scrutiny. As more documents become available, the public will have an opportunity to see beyond curated narratives and understand the real stakes behind these legal maneuvers. In the latest twist of the ongoing legal drama involving Blake Lively and the Wayfair defendants, a crucial allegation was raised: that every accusation being made might in fact be a veiled confession. This notion echoed when Perez Hilton himself denied working with Wayfair or engaging in narrative shaping for profit, stating explicitly that he's not in the business of manufacturing stories. Ironically, this echoed the very thing Blake Lively was accused of doing through her collaboration with the New York Times, shaping public narratives for her own legal and personal benefit. At the heart of this courtroom saga lies a desperate attempt to circumvent the New York Shield law, where Blake's legal team aims to discredit Hilton's journalistic privilege and force disclosure of confidential communications. Her motion seeks to portray Hilton not as a journalist, but as a strategic mouthpiece, allegedly collaborating in a smear campaign, with a key focus now being on the supposed disappearance or deletion of evidence. Since Blake Lively failed to obtain direct proof of communications showing a coordinated attack against her, her next likely strategy, according to predictions, would be accusing the opposition of destroying or hiding evidence. Indeed, she already began to lay the groundwork, claiming the Wayfair defendants refused to voluntarily turn over documents and forced her to expend massive resources litigating access to these communications. Despite Wayfair previously asserting that no such communications existed, going so far as to submit interrogatory responses stating there were no direct collaborations with content creators or shared scripts, Blake's team is presenting their lack of disclosure as an active refusal rather than an absence of material. They emphasize that Lively has received no communications involving Hilton, and imply that his use of redacted messaging apps like Signal is suspicious, potentially indicating that vital information was lost, destroyed, or withheld. This speculation is used to insinuate deliberate spoliation, which is a serious accusation that could carry legal consequences. However, this narrative ignores a fundamental legal principle. If no litigation or legal preservation order was in place at the time, no party had an obligation to retain data. Until Blake's formal demand letter in December 2024, there was no legal reason to preserve such communications, making any deletions, whether automatic on apps like Signal or manual in inboxes, completely lawful. In fact, many individuals, including journalists and content creators, regularly delete their emails, texts, or use apps with disappearing messages for privacy and security. This is especially true for public figures who are targets of hacking or gossip. Thus, the narrative that using Signal or encrypted apps automatically implies guilt is not only flawed but misleading. Many use Signal because it's a secure and encrypted platform that allows for international communication and confidential discussions without surveillance or third-party intrusion. So even if people in this case did communicate through Signal, and even if those messages disappeared as part of the app's default behavior, it doesn't constitute willful destruction. There's also no definitive proof that those communications would have even supported Lively's narrative. Wayfair has stated they didn't collaborate with content creators or supply them with stories, just general press releases that go to all media outlets like People, TMZ, or the New York Times. But now, lacking proof of a smear campaign, Blake Lively seems to be pivoting, framing her case around the idea that the evidence was deleted or destroyed before she could obtain it. This tactic, while speculative, strategically sets up a victim narrative. She claims she's being denied justice not because her accusations are unfounded, but because others obstructed her by erasing the truth. Yet again, it's important to remember, if no litigation existed during the communication period, then there was no legal duty to preserve messages. Her team's claim that messages were deleted is constructed to sound incriminating, even though it has no legal weight without proof that the deletion happened post-litigation notice. Furthermore, being on Signal or deleting messages is not automatically a sign of malicious intent. It's worth noting that Signal is widely used among creators, journalists, lawyers, and celebrities for privacy, not concealment. Many content creators who report on Blake Lively are known to use such platforms not to conspire, but simply to protect their work and discussions from leaks. Using encrypted communication is not in itself incriminating. Lively's team also accused Hilton of shaping narratives for profit, while paradoxically doing the same thing by working with the New York Times to push her version of events. Hilton, on the other hand, has previously posted statements from Blake's legal team or sought comments as any journalist would. Seeking comment from one party about their actions, such as asking why they didn't file an amended complaint, doesn't require both sides to be consulted, especially when only one side is the focus of the inquiry. Therefore, his limited interactions don't equate to him being part of a smear. The whole idea here is to create the impression that Hilton and Wayfair are playing a shell game with the evidence, supposedly depriving her of the proof she needs to make her case. Her team filed a motion to compel the release of these communications, arguing that time is running out with only 10 days left in document discovery. They insist that it's unreasonable for her to keep spending money chasing documents across various platforms and people when they believe Hilton has them. But this position presumes those documents exist and that he has them, despite all evidence to the contrary. Friedman, her opposing counsel, has made several public statements, and there is no indication that he or his client did anything outside the law. Blake's legal team is attempting to flip the burden, claiming destruction of data where no legal requirement to keep it ever existed, and casting herself as the aggrieved party, even though she may be the one who first encouraged deletion. Remember, Wayfair previously accused Lively of instructing Taylor Swift and others to delete messages, meaning her current arguments are a mirror image of accusations she herself once faced. In a landscape where no legal preservation was required until December 2024, any deletions before that date cannot reasonably be considered spoliation. Without evidence or legal standing, her claims become speculation layered with victimization rhetoric. Simply put, she couldn't prove a smear campaign, so now she's saying she wasn't allowed to prove it because the evidence was destroyed. It's a fallback narrative, one that blames the absence of proof on foul play rather than accepting it as a lack of merit. With her claims possibly unraveling, this pivot seeks to preemptively place blame for that failure on the defendants. And this entire situation now hinges on whether the court sees through this tactic or gives weight to her unsubstantiated claims of deletion. All eyes now turn to Wayfair's upcoming response to her motion for sanctions, which she likely hoped would turn public opinion in her favor. Moreover, everyone awaits their rebuttal to the staggering 2,000 pages of documents she submitted in her motion to compel, which they've already asked the court for more time to respond to. Also pending is a reply to Blake's emotional protest over the deposition, an event that clearly rattled her, especially given how firmly Brian Friedman has pushed back against her assertions. If anything, the emotional nature of Blake's latest filings suggests this fight has become personal, and her narrative management strategy now includes not only legal moves but also public manipulation through victimhood claims. In the end, even if she can't prove the smear campaign, She seems determined to walk away claiming it happened anyway, saying she was robbed of the chance to show it. But legally, lack of evidence is not the same as suppression of evidence. This is now a story of legal theater, strategic pivots, and the weaponization of speculation when proof falls short.